Reddit Ask Me Anything. I am a 100-year-old human and a World War II veteran. I want to share my life and experiences with people who might be helped by them. Ask me anything. As you may have imagined, the person typing and facilitating this Ask Me Anything is not the 100-year-old human, but his granddaughter, me. A little bit about my grandpa. He grew up in Washington State and has traveled quite a bit. He worked for the FDA for many years, some as an investigator, some as a pharmacist. He served in the Air Force during World War II as a photographer. Clearly there's more to him than this, so ask him some questions. My great-grandmother lived to 108 and she told the best stories about life and learning. What is one thing you'd like to share with younger generations? Just use common sense. Reduct. What's a food you loved in the past that doesn't taste the same anymore? Good home fries. Laughs. I'll have to think about that. We got more acquainted with lamb instead of beef. I can say he loves his oysters. Always has and always will. I'll put his more rambling answers to questions that haven't been asked yet. Haha. During the war with Japan, there was periods of time that the Navy would set forth on the map a 30-mile stay-out area, and it was such we had to go back in and photograph it, but in the meantime we photographed outside of the 30-mile radius. When I say we, I mean the photo planes. Flight was in the area to fill in the 30-mile circle that hadn't been photographed when the president announced the bombing of Hiroshima. Right after the president announced, everyone was scrambling to see what Flight Foreign Air would bring back, because our cameras were used to make pictures 18 inches wide, 9 inches deep. In Europe they used the same camera with a lens arrangement taking 5 inches square for wherever they were flying. And so the word came down to my repairman and me that our cameras better not fail this time because they had longer service periods than those in Europe. In the theater, we thought those photographs were very restricted. Within less than several weeks, our pictures were in some of the public photo magazines. The Japanese had invaded some western part of the Philippines. The photo planes photographed where they were. Prints were made, all large size, at least 8 by 10 or larger, and they were asked to deliver by air to the ground troops near the Japanese. The first attempt at that, they dropped a package of them, but it got torn up, so they asked for further prints, and they said this time, the P-30 photos took pictures. The first picture stopped, did HT a photo work, took the pie, they put a red flag on a pole. Please see if you can come close to it. The pilot who came knocked the red flag down. He radioed back. Is that close enough? During college, I was in pharmacy and the Baptist church rented a room where once a week people could gather there and have a fish and chip lunch for 35 cents. I graduated in high school in 1937, was one of the few boys in a school of 300 that had his own car. That's because I went out and got a job delivering papers that I enjoyed doing. Several things I learned from the gas station. There was a fella that had a Cadillac Oldsmobile and every time he went somewhere it would squeak. The dealers tried to fix it but I figured out what to do due to my dad's suggestion to me to figure out how something works then do it. That way I can give help to my dad, my father-in-law, and other people I knew. His dad was very mechanically oriented. Bro, that's a long time to be alive. Now, what hasn't changed in your life? Something that you believe always has been and may always will be. Common sense. What's one thing that you remember from your experiences that doesn't fail to make you smile? Whenever he talks about his late wife, Audrey, there is a light that illuminates his entire being. He loved her so much. She died a little after I was born, so I didn't get to know her unfortunately. His calendar in his bedroom is still on the month year that she died. She was very dear to him. I heard you have a pretty cool granddaughter. Not the one in that photo. She's okay I guess. A different one, who is clearly far superior. How does it feel to have such a cool granddaughter? Again, not that one. The other one. I froze out. Laughs. I'll work on that later. Has reaching 10 decades given you any new insight? The world is a mess. Laughs. I may want to modify that answer later. I like you. Thanks for joining us on Reddit today. My question. Have you been to Germany or Japan since the war? What were your thoughts? The wife and I have been to Germany since for vacation. I've been to Japan since in regard to FDA regulations. Just looking at their food habits and their environment. just appreciating what they had. Living 100 years. What was the biggest leap of technology that you've experienced? What seemed the most unreal when it came out? On computers, it was something that took me a while to catch on to, and how to use it. When they first became a thing, he was awed. On television, essentially the same answer. The artillery guns and others were equipped with equipment that could detect when other objects were nearby and go off even though it had not been aimed at. That technology was used also for ground fire. There was a time during the Pacific part of the war that US forces did not know where the Japanese fleet was. The CO of the 8th Photo, which was also in my general area, was flying on a photo mission and saw the Japanese fleet. He hightailed his way home squawking on his radio. The radios was good for 35 miles. That resulted in a US Navy dealing with the Japanese fleet, both air and navy. In case it's not clear, he's talking about the proximity fuse that was invented in that era. End Wikipedia org link. What was his favorite plane that he got to photograph? World War II or anything afterwards? And thank you for your service, sir. P-38 fighter/photo. The fighter aircraft was used mainly in Europe area. The photo area was used to take the guns out, put in 2 or 3 sets of cameras, and the print negatives that were produced were 18 inches wide and 9 inches deep. Most of those photos were made around 20,000 feet. So that gives you the scale for how you want to measure it. The P-38 was used somewhat in the Pacific. The P-38 was an escort for the bombers, but it was mainly recognized as a fighter plane. But around Europe, big river there, they put 150 and 300 pound bombs and made them into bombers, because the Germans would look up, oh they're just taking photos, and kaboom. What was the most tense moment of your life? When I stepped forward to get married. No kidding. Just briefly. I thought I was gonna faint when the pastor asked those questions. I recently came across a shoebox full of letters that my great-grandparents wrote to each other during World War II. Did you have anyone you were writing sweetheart letters to? For general letters, just a few people I met in the service, Air Force. For sweetheart there was a girl in student hall every other seat in the auditorium. I liked her very much. She had a Spanish book. I looked to the other side of me. Another girl had a dictionary. I used her dictionary to write to the first one. She thought I knew Spanish but I didn't. She was mad at me. What's the best and worst thing about being 100 years old? Best thing. Being alive. Laughs. One of us. One of us. What's the earliest song you remember hearing? On music he enjoys. Not modern times, he doesn't recall one specific song, but definitely enjoys classical music. He used to listen exclusively to Weta when he drove, and when we lived together I loved waking up to blaring classical oldie music from the TV. How's it like watching your children actually grow old? A great delight. I have 2 questions that I would love to hear the perspective of an aged gentleman on. What was it like when you learned of the atomic bomb? This is such a huge turning point in human history that I can't help but imagine the ramifications must have felt huge. Similar to question 1. What was it like when you learned that humans had walked on the moon? Both of these, the bomb and the moon, are things we take for granted now, but at the time they must have been a massive paradigm shift. Can you share your thoughts? Many thanks for your time, and for your service. It was a fantastic illustration of science. He says he wasn't scared about the bomb because people did not understand what the atomic bomb was. Very surprising illustration of science. He was in Mount Baker, Washington. He didn't watch it at the time, but the word got out. Don't drive faster than 35 miles per hour. Boy, it took forever to get home. The state made a law change. Save gasoline and avoid accidents. He heard about it later on. One of the training things our page 38 is photograph various things widespread. One pilot flew to the Grand Canyon and photographed the underside of the big bridge. When he got back to Colorado Springs he was there with scissors to cut off the underside of the bridge because that was illegal kind of flying. Not many people saw that. What did you do in the years after the war? Was it directly back to school or something else? Got my license in pharmacy, saw recruitment for FDA and joined them, and traveled to see how other people lived. After all you've been through, what motivates you to do things nowadays? Mainly my one specific granddaughter. Damn, okay, I'm a little teary-eyed. Did you ever smoke tobacco? Only on specific assignments of undercover work. At medical appointments I've taken him to. For the questionnaire he's always said never. I guess it took a stranger asking to find the truth. Most shocking thing you photographed in World War II that you did not expect? Let's not put it on what I photographed. In Normandy, of all the areas that photo planes did, was the total area that they put into pictures. That ended up in something like 10,000 total prints. We'll add something later on, he says. Did you fathom ever reaching 100? Perhaps it's cliche to ask, but what is it like reaching such a milestone? I dreamed of being able to do that, and I did it, and an impossible question, laughs. Military or not, what achievement has made you happiest in life? Having an excellent family and superb friends. What did you eat to get to 100 years old? A lot of oysters. What do you know at 100 years old? That wish you knew far earlier? Answer delayed. That's a sticker. How to work with other people. Insufficient data for meaningful answer. What is your diet like? Fab food? His diet up until being in rehab. Broke his hip a couple of weeks ago. Was pretty rich. Would go between his two favorite restaurants every night. Rich salmon. And definitely oysters. As soon as he was out of surgery he was like, when can I get oysters? Is there anything from his younger days that he truly regrets doing not doing to this day? Regret. Not marrying Audrey earlier. Laughs. Audrey was his wife. What was the biggest change you noticed while working for the FDA for many years? How FDA regulations assured quality food, drugs, cosmetics. Dear sir, I don't have a question really, but as a man that was in a war-torn country in my youth, Bosnia, I want to say that without people like you lift my spirits up by a huge margin. I remember being there as a kid and seeing US soldiers riding the tanks through the streets, and I would wave at them, and every single time they waved back. This is more than just being nice. This wave back made a kid like myself feel safe and more at ease in a place filled with destruction and death. And that goes a long way. My grandparents were in World War II as well, and that was by far the worst of the worst wars. The worst of humanity's evil side was in that war, but also the best. To have been a part of literally the world's good versus evil conflict cannot go unforgotten, and without all of us thanking you. So please, take it from me, a random Bosnian guy on the internet. We truly appreciate you and are forever grateful for you, and we literally owe you guys our lives. Thank you. You are loved by a lot of people, please never forget that. As far as a question, here is one. When you came home from World War II, after greetings your family and getting rest etc., when you found yourself alone with no one around, what was the first thing you did alone? Thank you again, I can't say it enough. Edit. OMG, thank you guys for my first golden award things. I'm sorry I don't know the proper terms, lol. This really made my day. Thank you guys. I read this to him and he got a big smile. As for the question, he says leave that unanswered for the moment. What is your favorite movie? I don't see that many movies to know. What I do enjoy is when they do exploration of Egypt and so on. Historical. And that in effect is a movie. Was the food you ate at war any good? Some was not. Mainly getting used to the lamb. Thank you so much for your service. Can you tell me who your favorite president was in your lifetime? Hoover. He was not very popular, but he was a good president. Just what you'd read about him. That's all. That's all you have to go on. This blows my mind. Hoover is someone that I've read about in history books. It seems so long ago. It's really inspiring to see one man's life can experience so much. Beautiful. What's the best advice you can give a young adult who is unsure of where they are headed in life? Might set up on Pikes Peak and say my opinions, but Pikes Peak might be too high and the words are lost. Hello. What are your favorite memories of working for the FDA? Meeting new people and seeing how the FDA law protected good people. Of all the years you've lived, have you had a favorite? Why? The 19th of April, 1919 to now. Laughs.